Hi, my name is Jerome Richardson. I'm a 21-year-old college senior. I've maintained my silence up until now about my connection to the recent protests at City's Church in St. Paul, Minnesota, which is my hometown, simply because I'm focusing on finishing my degree and graduating in May. However, with an indictment looming, I fear for my safety and the threat of public doxing. Having overcome many obstacles to reach this point, I really hope to be able to complete this semester and graduate and earn my degree. On January 18th, I assisted Don Lemon during his visit to the Twin Cities by helping with logistics and connecting him with local context. Don was reporting on the situation on the ground during the occupation by DHS and ICE and Border Patrol agents. And at that time, I was proud to support his work in exposing the everyday injustices resulted from the federal government's agenda. As a consequence of this support, I am now being targeted by Trump and the federal administration. I say this to say I'm incredibly proud of those who have already faced their indictment and detention. And I know this fight is far from over. Their courage has certainly inspired me. Yet this is the price of being unapologetic about humanity and love of Christ. I support the activists who felt compelled to highlight the hypocrisy of how Pastor David Easterwood could simultaneously be a pastor at the church and the local leader of ICE operations. What people are experiencing goes against human and civil rights, as well as the teachings of Jesus, who indeed flipped over tables. So while I've been an active youth leader since the murder of George Floyd, I'm speaking out now because I anticipate being in federal custody sometime in the coming days. I want to share my love and gratitude and ask that you all support through three actions. Pray for my safety and my peace of mind. Do not stop fighting against this oppressive system. And please support my legal defense fund, as I am in dire need of you all's financial support and emotional support, as well as prayers. Hi, my name is Jerome Richardson. I'm a
It be known that was Jerome Richardson, and of course we have some breaking and developing news as it relates to him. Community members and local activists are sounding the alarm this morning, y'all, following the reports that that young man, activist Jerome Richardson, has been taken into custody. Now, this is according to on one of our Black Press papers, the Minnesota Spokesman Recorder. Richardson, a Temple University student, was reportedly arrested by federal agents in Philadelphia. Greer and I actually got a call last week about this situation that was developing, but at the time he didn't want to come forward, and now it appears that he has been detained. Now, this move follows, of course, that IG post that you saw, and he was one of the key people to help usher in Don Lemon to give him an assessment of what was happening in Minneapolis. And so community leaders are now calling for immediate clarity on his whereabouts and the legal basis for his detention. So as you see, the federal government continues to arrest protesters and journalists who are just exercising their First Amendment right. Good morning, Let It Be Known family. Lots of headlines, lots of developing stories that are happening today. And so let's head to our next story. Orangey, I saw that you actually talked about this this morning. This is another developing and breaking news story. A federal judge has delivered a last-minute blow to the Trump administration's immigration agenda, halting the attempt to end temporary protective status, or TPS, for hundreds and thousands of Haitians. Now, U.S. District Judge Ann Reyes issued the temporary stay just 24 hours before the protections were set to expire. Now, in her 83-page opinion, Judge Reyes stated that the decision to terminate the program was likely racially motivated and failed to follow federal procedures. She explicitly called for the termination null and void, and that's for now. Now, let's talk about the impact of what she ruled. This ruling provides immediate relief for an estimated 350,000 Haitian nationals who are facing deportation and the loss of their work permits as early as today. So two important stories as we continue to follow this ICE story and this Trump administration's forceful way of intimidating and terrorizing undocumented immigrants in this country, and in fact, also terrorizing U.S. citizens, murdering U.S. citizens. I want to go to the chat right now. Good morning, Sandra Jones. Michelle Madison has pulled up. Advance me. Hello, good morning to you too as well. And Orange G is saying, salute, young brother. Stand for something or fall for anything. I will donate to his or anybody else legal defense fund. So yesterday we did a live with Nakima Levy Armstrong, who was one of the ones that spoke out. She was the one speaking out loudly in the city's church. I recommend that you go follow, like, and subscribe to Black Press USA. That interview is up. It was about an hour interview, and she took us through everything that is happening from the second, going into the second year of the Target boycott, talking about City's church and what that church really is, which is founded and rooted in white nationalism. So I encourage you to go check out the conversation. It's on our Instagram page, Black Press USA, right now. So it's a lot to get through. There's the interview is up, it's available. And before we get to this next story, Greer, I want to jump down to story 3, where we're talking about the city of Dallas has begun the process of removing 30 crosswalks, including Black Lives Matter and rainbow LGBTQ plus designs. And of course, this follows an executive order from Governor Greg Abbott and a directive from the Texas Department of Transportation labeling them political distractions. So now Black Lives Matter, queer community are being called political distractions. And they're giving the city 90 days to complete the removals or face potential cuts to state funding. This is what's happening. This is the state of our nation. And, you know, we have to be highly concerned. We have a couple of guests coming up today that are going to talk to us about helping fix and build our credit. And we're going to have a conversation with Dr. Marcus Hunter about what's happening to him as he is part of the push for reparations in this country. So that is all coming up shortly, within a few minutes. Let's head to New York. Where Mandami has named Stanley Richards, a formerly incarcerated criminal justice reformer, to run the New York City jails. So Stanley is the first ever formerly incarcerated person to serve as head of the Department of Corrections in New York City. Now, this is what you talk about when you talk about prison. Is about rehabilitation and helping you come out to society and make something out of your life. You know, this is one of those stories, y'all. Now, Mandami entrusted Stanley Richards, an ex-Rikers Island inmate, and former executive VP at Fortune Society. Now, he's charged with overseeing the Big Apple's jails, aiming for both safer jails and reform. And Mandami said Richards' historic appointment, that this achievement is not merely symbolic. It is a testament to the thought and leadership he will bring to every member of corrections staff and incarcerated New Yorkers. So, you know, we were talking a couple weeks ago about how Mandami had no Black deputies. But we also see that he is making up his cabinet or his appointees. Some of those people are African Americans. This is huge. This is a huge win for somebody who understands what being incarcerated is. So hopefully the things that he went through, he can help fix within that system. And I know Tamika Mallory was meeting with Mandami, it was last week or week before last as well. So let's go to the chat. Let's see what the chat is saying. Mary Holiday, don't even know what you're talking about to try to listen to you. Oh, okay, Mary. You have somebody said all came in illegally, but boy, bye. And Dr. Marilyn says, wow. Yeah, that's really going on, Dr. Marilyn. So we're waiting for our guests to come on in. And as we do, let's keep the headlines going. Now, Trump has announced that he's closing the Kennedy Center, y'all. He'll close in July for a two-year renovation. Now, the news comes as the art institution received a flood of cancellations, and he did not elaborate on how the project will be financed or how much it'll cost. Now, rumor has it, and it's circulating that a lot of this has to do with all of the cancellations that have been happening. And traditionally, the Kennedy Center at the beginning of the year in January is booked for the entire year. And so there are probably so many holes in that calendar that they couldn't, keep it open. So instead of, looking crazy, he's going to save face and he's just going to shut it down. So that's what's happening in our nation. Our president is continuing to shut everything down or destroy it because he can't make any sense of it. And so we are still waiting for our guest. She is on her way. She's here. So let's go to our first story. We're going to go back up to story 3, Greer, or story 1, which was a headline that broke yesterday. It was huge. It was surprising. Sherri Shepherd is the latest Black woman to be laid off. Now, her daytime talk show, The Sherri Shepherd Show, has been canceled, citing evolving daytime television landscape. So the production company says it will try to explore alternatives for the program on other platforms. And our final episodes are slated to air this fall. So as we see Black women across this country that are having to, pivot and redefine what they're doing, Sherri Shepherd has been entered into that group. And this comes as the latest Bureau of Labor Statistics jobs report shows a striking disparity for Black women. So here's the scenario. 91,000 women left the labor force last month, in December, compared to 10,000 men who joined the labor force in December. Now, if you look at all of 2025, men's labor force size grew over 600,000, around 600,000, right? While women grew by just 100,000, 200,000, 184,000 to be correct. Now, unemployment for Black women increased in 2025, rising to 7.3%. Okay. Now, the overall unemployment rate for workers is 4.4%. So overall, workers unemployment in this country is at 4.4%, but for Black women, it's at 7.3%. And we make up less than 13% of the population. But Black women are at 7.3%, while the nation is at 4.4%. That's saying when America gets a cold, Black folks catch pneumonia. Now, as of this month, the official U.S. Board of Labor Statistic report for January 2026 is delayed because of the shutdown. And so, although that's grim, our first guest is no stranger to the show, and she knows how to pivot when life serves you lemons or dead. She's a wealth activist, a TEDx speaker, and I'm here to show us how to break the broke code. Please welcome Constance Carter. Good morning.
What's up, lady? How you doing?
Finding you.
I'm
Finding
happy
you.
to be here. Thank you for having me.
Happy for you to be here. And you know, Sherry Shepherd, the news broke, and now
That's crazy. I'm just now hearing that.
yeah, they broke the news yesterday, and Kelly Clarkson, her show was canceled as well yesterday. So women overall are being impacted under this Trump administration. But of course, as you heard, unemployment nationally is at 4.4%, but for Black women, it's at 7.3%. And a lot of that, a lot of those women are federal workers who have had long-standing jobs, and so they're going to have to figure out how to pivot because the job market is not sustainable. And these lifelong jobs that our parents and our grandparents had are not the same anymore. And so we have to figure out what this pivot looks like. So you've done this before. What would be your advice to Sherry Shepherd right now?
Man, listen. Well, so first of all, I didn't even know until you just said it, but I think it's crazy, but I think it also breeds opportunity. And nobody wants to think about that like right now while they're going through it. I had a friend yesterday who just told me, a government worker, just told me yesterday morning, I just got laid off. And I'm like, damn. And I want to be sympathetic, but I also want to be optimistic because I think this is great. Now, everybody is not meant to be a business owner. I get it. But I think that sometimes God allows things to happen so that we can walk in our purpose. We can be in alignment with the things that we're supposed to do. And a lot of times we've overstayed our welcome in situations that weren't really meant for us. You think about Joy-Ann Reid, she had to pivot and look at what she's doing. She's still making an impact. They tried to shut her up, but she's still making an impact. Look at Roland Martin. He has his own network. Look at Don Lemon. All these people who've gotten released. Now they're building their own platforms. And I think this is precisely what we got to do, Black people. So this is sad, but exciting. You know what I'm saying? This is the new frontier for Black people. I think it's out of our pain because we know that oh so well, out of our struggle becomes progress. It breeds greatness. And so we've been able to create some really amazing things with just the little bit that we have. So I think this is a great opportunity. If we can pull our resources together and we do this right, this can be a whole movement. This moment can be a movement. And so I think that's a good thing.
Right. Now, I read somewhere where you have something called the Net 7 Collective.
I do.
Okay. And so, we're talking about traditional job markets, failing Black women. Can you provide a plan B that moves us from being employees to being owners?
Yes.
We're talking about it.
Ooh, yes. So thank you for that. So yeah, I do coach Black women from all over the country. So I was once laid off. I worked in the Silicon Valley. I'm from California. I'm from San Jose, California. I worked in Silicon Valley in IT, and that bubble hit and I had to pivot. So I was actually in the process of getting my real estate license. At 23, I purchased my first home and I was like, I really kind of want to do this. This is kind of cool. And I was like, I'm just going to do it on the side while I have my good, cushy, job. And God said different. So I ended up having to just go full time, go all in, just take off the training wheels and just do it. And I knew that I was going to have to fail. I knew sometimes I may have been embarrassed. When I first started, I had a raggedy ass car. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Sometimes the door would fly open while I was driving clients. I'm turning my clients in the back, holding on, like all these things. And I was okay, but I overcompensated my failure or my embarrassment with my service. You just got to just do it afraid, right? And so I came from that and I had to pivot and I had to go all in because I was commuting. I had just had a daughter. This is 20 plus years ago. I had just had my baby and I was commuting, and I was doing all the things. And I just said, this has to work. So I had a goal in mind. Like, this has to work. There's no plan Bs. I got to go all in. Whatever I got to do, I got to eat, sleep, breathe, drink. And I think sometimes we're just not disciplined to make it happen, or we don't, we fall short. Like if things are not happening when we want them to, like we could be right at the goal. You ever seen read the book, The Alchemist? He's right inches from gold. And then he turns around and goes the other way. He's right there. And so a lot of times we might be just right there, right before our breakthrough. And then when things don't happen, maybe it's not for me. And so if it's something that you really, really want to do, you got to be like Nike and just do it. So when you talked about Net 7, So, I built a real estate company in California. I built the largest Black-owned independent real estate firm in California. Did a lot of these amazing things, and had a great team. And then I went through a divorce, abruptly moved to the East Coast, to the DC area, and I've been chilling. Like, I was chilling for like 2 years. I was like, I don't want to do nothing. So I took a 2-year break, and I bought this big house, and I've been working on it and just doing all these things. But then during that time, I said, what do I really want to do? Who do I really want to impact? And that's how the Net 7 Collective was birthed. And it was really just impacting Black women who are trying to look for their next. What is it that I really want to do? How do I want to tackle this next chapter in my life? And so I just teach them those strategies. Like, there's basic things that we need to do, like, making sure your credit's good, making sure your money's good, but then building off the foundation of that. Well, here's some strategies. Here's how you invest. Here's some tactical things. Here are the things that you could do in order to increase your impact,
I love that. I love that. And I want to get into that because we're about to talk about a party. We're going to have a little mini party, party tonight. Okay. But first, I want to go back over to the chat where Gerald Lamont Gallen is saying, if you're not the CEO, job security is like white history. It doesn't exist. That's a good one, Gerald. Nancy Wall says Sherry is a comedian and has many other talents that she will do well. That's true. Gerald also says no lies detective. Somebody says do not follow Don. Dr. Marilyn says we are resilient. And then John Taylor says good morning from the Hawaiian Islands. Aloha, aloha. And Daniela Pierre says, for those who are currently employed, should be honing in on entrepreneurship mindset. And so let's talk about it. Let's do a mini party for your party tonight and see who wants to join in for the big party. Okay,
let's go.
So you're not doing seminars, you're throwing parties, and we're talking about the credit party that you're having tonight. So first off, why a party? Since when did looking at a FICO score become a celebration?
It's not for many. No, but there's so many things. And you know what? So I first want to say, that entrepreneurial mindset is so important. And so that CEO thing that she talked about, I think about, there's a Bible verse, Ecclesiastes 11:2, that said, have 7, no 8 revenue streams, because we never know when a disaster is going to strike, right? What happened in 2020?
Oh, so it's biblical.
That's biblical. A disaster struck, right? COVID. For me, 2022 was getting the divorce. I lost over $1 million, right? And I had to pivot. For other people, it could be divorce, it could be death, it could be a job loss. It's all of those things. So we have to have multiple revenue streams. You have to have something else, because you cannot depend on these white folks to make sure that you are secure for the remainder of your life. But when I early on in my career, I used to do these things called credit parties. So it was kind of like a Tupperware party. I would go to people's houses, and I just really wanted to meet people on a cellular level, right? I would go to these people's houses, just like friends and family. You gather all your friends and you have them come over, you cook, right? You cook, and then I talk to you about credit. And I'm just going to make it basic and plain, just like I talk right now, just really basic and plain way for you to understand your credit, how it works, because many people are like scared of it. They think it's the boogeyman. I remember, my parents talking about what we couldn't have, what we couldn't do because they had bad credit. I didn't know what it was. It was the boogeyman. It was ruining our life. So I vowed I would never have bad credit. Right. But life happens, and I went bankrupt and had a 379 credit score. So I know all about it. And then I had to rebuild out of that. I became a certified credit expert, and I took training, and I got my credit score up. But I used that as the blueprint to help other people. So then, I started having these parties, and I would do that, all over Northern California. And I said, as I'm thinking about different ways I can add value to people's lives, I do these master classes every Tuesday where I'm teaching some strategy, whether it's credit or it's, investing or wealth building, or writing a book or monetizing your genius, whatever it is. I do that every Tuesday at 12 for free. And so I said, well, let me bring back these credit parties, but I'll just make them virtual. So when did a credit score, FICO score, become a party? Listen, ain't no party like a Constance Carter party. I'm a party wherever I go. We're gonna have a good time.
The party don't stop. All right, let's get through a couple more of these questions so we can pump this party up. What's the number one credit myth that people bring to the party that you have to immediately just say, that ain't true?
I would say what people need to stop doing, because the first thing they do, people tell them to do is dispute everything. I call it the spray and paint. They just disputing everything. All right. And so what ends up happening is y'all waking up the dead. People who ain't thought about you in the last 5 years, they start calling you. They like, oh, she exists. Oh, let's start garnishing her wages. Let's start harassing her. Let's get this money. Because if a credit collection hasn't reported over the last 2 years, it's kind of dormant and it's not really hurting your score as much as, say, a new credit. So it's still hurting your score, but it's going to fall off. So a lot of people will just start disputing everything. And I think that's a big mistake that people do, is they just like do this thing I call the spray and pray.
Okay, for the person sitting there with the 500 credit score or 379 like yours used to be, feeling ashamed, can they really walk out of your party with the plan to hit 700?
Absolutely.
But what's the time period?
I did it. So for my 379, it took me about a year to get to a 700. So it's time. It's rebuilding. And like I've been there and done that. And that's the reason why I could do it with confidence and without making somebody feel embarrassed, because I've been there, done that, wrote some books about it. I got some books around here about it. Like my books, again, came out of hardship that I've had. So yeah, it's not an embarrassing thing because we all go through it. My goal is I exist to help Black people build wealth in whatever way. And I believe credit is the foundation of that wealth building. And so we got to get our credit together in order for us to get to that next level. Wealthy people don't use their own money. They use other people's money. So
you talk about credit is currency. So if cash is king, what does that make a 800 plus credit score?
Let's go. That means lower interest rates. That means access to more opportunities. That means more buying power. I mean, if you get into the 800 club, that means you have access to a lot more than somebody with a 500. Again, like I said, wealthy people are not using their own money when they're building wealth. Think about Elon Musk. As you know, when he bought Twitter, he didn't pay cash for it. He actually borrowed from his stock, and then he used that, you know, as his debt actually bought it. And so that's why they don't pay that much in taxes. But they're not using their own money. They have their money tied up in investments, and they're using other people's money, good debt, to purchase assets so that they can limit their liabilities. But we think that we want to pay cash for everything, and we think that we don't need good credit. But that's the difference. When I started using my credit in my business and my business credit, my business exploded. So it opened up the door for me, and I didn't have to bootstrap everything.
Okay, so we have a couple questions for you from the chat. One is a comment. Lady Leo says, "I love Constance Carter. She's the truth." All right. And then Michelle Madison says, and we have our next guest in, so we kind of got to do these in rapid fire. Michelle Madison says, what is your opinion on getting into the stock market or crypto?
ASAP. So you guys, y'all got to take your money out the bank, and you got to put it into things that are going to generate compounded interest. Period. So the bank is only giving you 0.23% interest on your money. And if you got a lot of money, I don't have my money tied up in the bank. I have my money in other vehicles, permanent life insurance plans, in stock, and other things that are generating compound interest. So as soon as possible, but remember, it's a long-term game. It's not short. So don't think that you're going to put it in today and make money tomorrow. You have to keep it in there, but get it in now.
And a quick question to that, what do you think about these apps that, you know, you just put money into and you pick, or do you think that you should go to like somebody that works in finance to help you invest your money?
I think that you should invest in things that you know, right? If you don't know where to invest, like most of us don't have, you know, thousands of dollars to start investing. We might have $25 or $50. You could use Robinhood and have $100.
That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, go have $100 going in there a month. I put money into Acorns. Acorns is great because it takes your money out of the bank, you save it, and then it invests for you, right? So in a year, I got saved like $30,000, right? I own a marijuana dispensary in Stockton, California. I took my weed money and I bought I mean, it was a 6-figure investment. So I took some of my flipping money and I took some of my weed money, no, my acorns money, and I bought the marijuana dispensary. So you can take that money, you can put it somewhere, it'll invest for you, and then it compounds your growth.
Okay. And then last question from the chat: what makes your credit score drop?
Oof, child, late payments. 35% of your credit score is late payments. 30% of your credit score is your revolving balance. That's your credit cards. So get those credit cards down. That's the easiest way to build your credit very quickly, is having low balances on your credit report.
Dr. Marilyn says, I use Stash.
It's like acorns.
Yeah. And then Gerald Gallen says, I don't know what to invest with besides myself.
You are your biggest investment, Gerald. Invest in yourself.
All right. So what's the vibe to the credit party? Are we bringing notebooks, or are we bringing a mindset or a bottle of wine? What's the vibe?
Baby. Yes, baby. All of it. So it's actually today at 12 o'clock. Again, I do free
12 o'clock, what? Eastern time?
I'm sorry. Okay. Yes. 12 Eastern,
9 a.m.
9 Pacific. Yes. Mm-hmm. So I just, we just gonna talk. And if you have a specific question, or you have a scenario, or you want to come in and get your credit analyzed, we can do that on the spot in a very safe and comfortable way. We won't tell all your business. So I'll invite people to come in and we just having a conversation. It's just an engaging. So typically my master classes, I have a replay. This is not going to be available for replay. This is just for the people who are there live. If you are live, then you'll get access. So go to gymmasterclass.com, GYMMASTERCLASS.com. You got to register, and then I'll give you the link, and then it will be on at 12.
And everybody, Greer has dropped the link in the chat. She's probably going to drop it in there one more time. And then we have one more question. If someone can only fix one thing on their report today, to see if they could jump their credit by next month, what would that be?
Reduce your credit card balances. That's the biggest thing. That's the quickest way that you could build your credit score, is reduce your credit card balances no more than 30%. That's the number one way to increase your credit scores quickly. And of course, well, that's number 2. Of course, no late payments. 35% is late payments. 30% is your credit card balance. Okay. So if you understand that, then you understand how to move on your credit. Keep those balances low on your credit cards. It's the golden thing.
Love it. See, we started with, bad news, but when you come to the village, we always have something for you to be better. So, Constance, we'd love to have you back, because this information it's uplifting. Just to hear hope. What you're giving is hope. You're dealing hope, and I'm
a hope dealer.
You're a hope dealer. So have fun on your class, and
I appreciate you
to having you back.
Thank you so much for always having me. I appreciate it. And you guys go to gymmasterclass.com. I'll be on at 12 Eastern. So y'all come with me. Appreciate you. Thank you so much. I love y'all. Have a good one.
Peace and love. All right. So there you have it. The chat is chatting, and Daniela Pierre says credit card consolidation. Any insight? Oh, when she comes back, Daniela, you got to stick with us over here, Black Press USA's morning show, and we will be able to have her back to get those questions answered. And so let's have a conversation, since we're talking about money, since we're talking about finances. One of the big conversations within the Black community is reparations. And there are people all across this country, from California to Capitol Hill, who are continuing this conversation about reparations for Black Americans. So joining us now is Dr. Marcus Anthony Hunter. He's a world-renowned reparations scholar, a UCLA professor. And Dr. Hunter recently stepped forward to blow the whistle on a deeply troubling situation in Washington State. Welcome, Dr. Hunter.
Peace, my sister. How you doing?
I'm doing good. It's been a couple years, right?
Right, yeah.
So I met Dr. Hunter when I curated the Authors Book Club for Black History Month, full circle for Black History Month a couple years ago at LA City Hall, thanks to Dr. Michael Davis. And we were talking about your book, Radical Reparations, Healing the Soul, of a nation. So first, before we get into the whistleblowing, let's talk about your book, Radical Reparations. Tell our family about it.
Thank you so much. We are also at the paperback release of it, just released January 20th. So thank you for the opportunity. And effectively, what I offer is that, when we think about reparations, we ought to think about it comprehensively so that we can think about all of the different forms that slavery took, so we can think about all of the different repairs that it takes to deal with the harm. And so I often say that it's a check plus model, where we're thinking, about direct compensation and also beyond direct compensation. And so I talk about political reparations, intellectual reparations, legal reparations, economic reparations, spiritual, spatial, and social reparations. And those 7 forms constitute what I call radical reparations, which is what I think, Black people across the globe, African Americans in the United States, have earned more than deserve.
Okay, so you can pick up that book now, available on Amazon, anywhere books are sold, right?
Bookshop.org, everywhere you can get books, absolutely.
All right. So let's talk about what's happening in this troubling situation that is brewing over at Washington State. Now, of course, you're a leading voice in the movement. And so what's happening at Washington State?
Yeah, so Washington is one of the first states attempting a statewide reparations study. So many people are aware of California being the first in the nation. And so now we see it moving up the West Coast. So now we're in the Northwest. Okay. And my proposal was submitted on time, but quarantined by the state's internal systems for over 3 weeks during the entire evaluation window. When I asked for the debrief I was entitled to, I was denied twice until I paid for and retained legal counsel. The agency later acknowledged these issues, but said the process didn't require correction. And that raised a larger question for me, which is, can reparations be trusted if the process itself lacks integrity? And I'm still waiting on answers. So what I shared was not only the whole process I went through, which is public, but also then after exhausting all of the remedies available to me through the Department of Commerce, I then sent a letter to the first Black Attorney General in Washington State's history, Attorney General Nicholas Brown. And I am still waiting on a response, at least a confirmation of receipt of that letter. So you have the discretion in the Department of Commerce matching up against a silence, from leadership in the state where citizens would go for some sort of redress or oversight. And I thought, if I'm having this issue, this is an issue that is happening for most people. And this should not be the process, especially when we're dealing with something as sacred as reparations. Because on one side, if you have reparations for proponents, we want to make sure that it's actually full of integrity so that what reaches people is meaningful. And also for people who are against it, we know for a fact that there's going to be a scrutiny that comes with any kind of repair. So the same way that I'm talking about what happened on the front end, people are going to go to the front end to disqualify or delegitimize whatever comes out of that process. So it really poisons the well if we don't think about integrity on the front end and all the way through the process of governance.
Right. So I read that the state chose a group focused on DEI. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So why is DEI not the same thing as reparations?
Yeah, the first thing I'll say is DEI certainly is not the same as Black, which is why they share no letters in common. There is no D, no E or I in the word Black. So we first know that there's already a distance between the words themselves. I think the other thing is that when we think about the work of reparations, it is rooted in something that begins before the idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's at the actual origin story of the United States of America, that enslaved Black Africans were part and parcel of building out this nation. And they did that for free. And they also did that while being subjected to all sorts of crimes against humanity. And until we really address that harm, we can't even think about diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is a foundational need versus something that is about what's happened as America's unfolded.
So if this study moves forward as is, Can the results even be trusted by the Black community?
Well, I think without someone saying something, as I've been doing, and thank you for the opportunity to be in space with you to share that, is that how would we know? Unfortunately, outside of what you're doing and members of the Black press are doing, the average American has no idea what's happening in the reparations movement. There's not yet still been a national media cycle that's been sustained about this topic. So usually what happens is by the time the average person hears about it, maybe they take a good faith, estimate and say, hey, this must be legitimate. Okay, let me tap in. And then as you know, what happens is once it's given that soft legitimacy, it starts to travel and people start to uplift it as a blueprint for what to do, especially when you're so early in the game. And I think this is where some of the jeopardy happens, because if we're unaware that there are problems in the process, then we start to trust the process that we actually should be having scrutiny over. Because again, even if positive things are generated from this, those who are against this will go back to the beginning, request those public records, some of which I'm already sharing, and say, hey, wait a minute, right at the end, right at the beginning, there was a quarantine, there wasn't equity in your process, disqualified, start over. No remedies, so it's important that we understand that this is also about making sure that we're protecting the sanctity and the sacred nature of reparations.
On a personal level for you as a descendant of enslaved people, how does it feel to be locked out of a process that you're qualified for, that you're passionate about, and that you're really willing to do more than what's asked? How does it feel to be locked out of a process specifically designed to fix the harms of inclusion that you're fighting for?
I appreciate that. How it feels is it is both concerning and also a reminder. Oftentimes when we think about professional success or educational success or being an author, we may think that we get removed from experiences that regular, smegular, degular Black people are having. Right. And this is one of those instances where doctor, no doctor, author, no author, professor, no professor, I'm having the experience that I am pretty sure that many Black people are having with the Department of Commerce in Washington State. The way that I was being treated, it felt commonplace. This was not something that seemed new. These behaviors felt like a pattern, honestly. And part of what I think is really troubling is that you're at the mercy of the discretion of a white woman program officer making decisions about reparations. And one of the first things that stood out to me, which made me think about this as a public exercise, was a process that is meant to repair harm left me wounded. So what is it?
Wait, say that one more time.
A process that is meant to repair harm left me wounded. And so what does it mean that a reparative process leaves an African-American wounded in the process? And that was just to maybe get a contract. I'm starting now to think about what it means to execute the study. I want to make sure to be in harm reduction. If I was wounded as a bidder, what does it mean for the community to come forward and start testifying and giving up their personal biographical information? What kind of wounds will there be? And if you have any kind of reparative process that is wounding or injuring people, then that is certainly not the process you want to have.
Right, because even if they wanted to go with somebody else, it's the care and the way that they handled the situation that hurts. Totally get it. Now, Dr. Marilyn has a suggestion that she wants to add to the reparations list. She says all Blacks receive an 850 credit score. That would be a great remedy. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, shout out to Constance, who was right in front of me. I was in the green room like, yes. At the final chapter of my book called Better Have My Money, shout out to the sociologist, Brianna. Part of what I talk about as a potential remedy, because a lot of the conversation is about direct compensation. What does it mean to give people checks? I say we can also be thinking about Black people waking up to an 800 plus credit score. That is not something that is about direct compensation that we think about hand-to-hand cash, but it is a form of compensation that has deep financial ramifications that Constance, just before me, really enumerated way better than I could ever do about opening up financial opportunities, opening up an idea of moving from the red to the Black, being Black in the Black. That is the potential of having that kind of credit score.
I like that. There's another imagining what reparations looks like comes from Son RA. She says, or he says, my dream is, or they say, my dream is to be a part of revamping our children's education, connecting our education to global economics, science, technology, engineering, STEM, and telling our stories of the past, present, and future. What do you think about when you think about reparations in terms of education? How do you imagine that?
Yeah, what I hear that comment getting at is what I call social repair. We often hear education as a social good. And so that's about how can we create an infrastructure that educates people about the history. So our ancestors turned bondage into brilliance and survival into culture. That's an important thing to know and learn. And reparations is the unfinished work they handed to us. So if we don't govern that work with integrity, then we dishonor both the past and the future. In this moment is about making sure that we do repair right. And what we're hearing already is that percolating in the comments and folks listening and watching, that there are already all of these amazing creative designs that we have because we've been living in this experience our whole lives. We've been waiting for the opportunity to demonstrate that we have creative ideas and designs on what a bright and wonderful future looks like for us.
I love that. Deborah Rayford says, good morning from the Bay Area. David Youngblood is giving us a good morning. He's also saying there is no contracts for Black people anymore. All DEI now is for white males. And so, I mean, that's just a statement. It speaks for itself, right?
Right.
What does he say? When I get Dirty Money says, when I get my reparations, I'm gonna get a news truck and grill. Okay, I mean, hey, okay. And David Youngblood, he has another statement. White folks have no interest in our story. Well, you hear comments like that, and basically that's what we're up against as we fight for reparations. We're up against white America. What's your response to that when they have no? And then you're talking about a white woman in charge of you moving forward with reparations. I mean, how do you digest and process all that?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit more colorful than white people just don't care. I've found whether it's in book talk occasions or just conversation or just minding my own Black business and running into self-identified white people, when they actually get a chance to remove themselves of the steady diet of confusion and misinformation, they actually go like, actually, I don't oppose this. I kind of wonder why I've been led to think I oppose this. And I would also offer, Pew did a poll not too long ago on amongst Black people asking about Black support around reparations, and 77% of Black people supported it. So when we hear about opposition, I also want to throw in the 23% that would get us to 100. How are we in C range? So this is the school teacher in me on the issue and expecting other people to be in A range. That we have to get into a range that is very clear so that then when we're reaching out, which we always have to do in a country where we're the minority population, to get our allies on board. The other thing too is I would also offer to folks listening is, what if this whole thing of whiteness is a scam? And so when you're talking to white people about things that whiteness has done as harm, you have to also recognize you're up against a scam. How scams work is that they are inundating their victims with tons of information to make them believe what they're already believing. And ultimately, that's also their journey to de-scam their minds so that they can actually make space to hear when people are making these claims, when African Americans and descendants across the globe are making these claims, they're not coming at you individually. They're coming at the governments that sanction, constitutionalize, and authorize the participation and practice known as enslavement. So all of this conversation usually is, well, my family got here in Ellis Island in the 1920s, slavery was already over. I got here in 1975, slavery was already over. And that is true, except also everyone knows that America loves slavery. So this would be like me going to Australia and saying, well, I just moved in 2026. I have nothing to do with the killing of Aboriginal people, except going to Australia. I know that already. It's on their business card. It's a part of their larger story. And once you sort of get into the roots of that, which is what the word radical really means, roots. When you get into a rooted idea of that, then the kind of shame and blame game ends, and it opens up the idea that they go, well, actually, maybe I could support this. I don't know how I feel about this aspect or that aspect, but I actually can find room to be a part of making this move forward.
Oh, well, okay. Well, welcome in, Cassandra. She says, "Hey, school teacher, I'm at the school too." And she also says, "This your show?" Okay, it generated to my feed. Well, we're glad that we popped in your feed and come on in and welcome. So let's talk about the demand and next steps. Now, you're asking for people to contact Attorney General Nick Brown. What exactly do you want them to do when they contact?
Yeah, I'm asking for accountability and standards. I want people to read the record, which is why I made it public. It's on marcusanthonyhunter.com/R as in Ray, O as in open, L as in letter, and ask how reparations are being governed. For many people, this might be your first touch point on the national, local efforts. Use it as an opportunity to edify yourself on where we are in the movement, where we are in terms of policy. And then insist that this sacred work be carried out with transparency, expertise, and care. Because in this process, not only was I in this position, but also Dr. William Sandy Darity was also a part of the rejected proposals. So what does it mean for someone?
She black? Was she a black woman?
It's a black male professor,
Okay.
longtime economist, sociologist at Duke, who is often put forward one of the most popular understood models of direct compensation, which is focused around the black-white wealth gap. So what would it mean to inject households with several hundred thousands of dollars to try to close that gap, which you can measure over the life course of America? He has been a big proponent of that, and he was a part of another proposal that was not accepted. And so there were also only 3 proposals for an entire state. So there's a lot of different questions that I think most people would arrive at if they just had an opportunity to read the record. So I encourage people to go to the record, read it, ask for accountability and transparency in this process. That is, at the very least, what our government institutions owe us, and very much so owe the policy and practice of reparations, because again, on the positive side, should anything come from it, we want it to be sourced through integrity so that it can be meaningful and transparent. And we also want that transparency and integrity to exist, because if people come against it, they're going to go back to letter A and see if there were missed steps. So a lot of times, even with people who are excited and wanting to do this, skipping over things is unhelpful to the outcome, because there will be people who go back and hold you against very specific boundaries, very specific guardrails, and making sure there's no funny business. And here, there are a lot of questions in the case of Washington State.
Is there, how are we getting in contact with Attorney General Nick Brown? Do you have that information, or should we just Google it?
You can Google it, but also it's in all of the documents. So I shared the documents I sent. It has all of the contact information that I utilize. The emails for folks are all in that. So It is there as an arsenal of information for people to utilize in a way that they see fit.
I love how you have your call to action package together. I love it. I want to get through a couple more comments. I want you to respond to one, but this one is more of a statement from Dr. Marilyn. She says, "I love this conversation on reparations. It's electric and not the normal all or nothing I hear." Yeah, it's such a fun conversation to have. It's an important conversation, especially as we look at what's happening in our nation, and it can be so depressing, but Black folks are still moving forward and pushing forward, and we're still on the reparations path. I love it. I want you to respond to this comment from Kitten Me. He or they say reparations should not be given to people living today who were not slaves. This is very unfair to give you money when basically you weren't there. What's your response to that?
Yeah, when I hear the word unfair in the same conversation as reparations, I think that's getting around to why what we're doing is an important exercise. Because what does it mean for someone to be putting the word fair in a conversation that is originating in slavery? the word slavery does not go with the word fair. There's nothing about fairness that matches slavery. So when we're thinking about what a repair looks like for slavery, we always have to remember that our policy and our mission is aligned with the harm. So if the harm was unfair, okay, how do you deal with unfairness? You have to create a range of things that are specific to attend to the harms that were put upon a group of people, while everyone else got to, in many ways, benefit from another experience. So this is not about fairness or unfairness. It's about the fact that we have documented evidence of a specific group being enslaved for hundreds and hundreds of years, and that the legacy of that slavery has impacted their descendants in ways that we can pull up right now. For example, when I talk about this, I talk about how Black women, the major murderer of Black women in America is heart disease. Heart disease we can look at as rooted in right now, like your diet and your experience, or is it also genetic and epigenetic? And what we have learned from our science friends is that epigenetics are real. So even if people feel like, well, you weren't the slave on the plantation, if I do an epigenetic assessment of you, I will find deep generational patterns that exist and can be anchored in this experience that your triple great grandmother had. So it is very impossible to divorce African Americans from the experience of slavery, both in terms of our history, because it's not that long ago, and two, also in our bodies. Our bodies tell a very different record about whether or not we have any real distance from the harm that our ancestors endured.
For sure. There was a lawsuit we talked about last week where over 500 women were suing this hospital down south, you know, for taking their organs and things like that popped in my mind. But one more question. I think this is important because when we talk about, and you touched on this, when we talk about technology, AI, and we're talking about having equity in these spaces, Black people are pretty much left out of big tech, right? We can't even say that we're 1% of ownership or have any of these apps and things like that. And I'm saying that because David E. Kelly says they're stealing everything from us with AI. They're putting in systems to themselves to be astronomically enriched. The music industry is a perfect example. So when we look at AI technology, what is their connection with reparations? And is that imagined when you talk about reparations?
Yeah, I think one of the things that is really important to me and is a part of the model is around intellectual repair. So when we think about AI, one of the things that I think is less discussed is that in order to develop and invent these systems that we now think about as Chat or Claude or all of these other different AI technologies, is that they had to cannibalize existing information. And so some of what they cannibalized were books by Black authors. You know, some of what they cannibalized were inventions by Black people, you know, records and histories and all of these other things, music, as was discussed, film, television, that these all get eaten up so that when somebody goes to put in, hey, why do we not like Bill Cosby anymore? You can type that in and it will say because of this, this, and this. So people are reading something that's actually based on eating a lot of Black information and Black contributions, for which many of those folks have not been compensated for, at the very least included in the design of. So this is sort of like back to the internet. When the internet was being created, it just replicated an algorithm that gave emphasis to the white male experience before everybody else's. Because why? Those were the people who were designing it. And so there's a design feature that cannibalizes Black intellectual production and cultural contribution without properly crediting it and also citing it or compensating it as well.
Oh, Dr. Marcus Hunter, you have been enlightening us. And this conversation, it's refreshing because, like I say, we get bombarded with so many headlines. But this is like talking about Black folks' future in this country.
That's right.
And we know that, you know, our ancestors, even in the midst of slavery, as we talk about 100 years of Black history, they still had hope for a better future.
Yes.
And we're walking in that right now. And so I want to thank you for joining us, chat. The link to, if you want to support, the link is in the chat. Greer dropped it. Radical Reparations, Healing the Soul. of a Nation is in paperback.
That's right.
Yeah, like I have a hard copy you gifted me with.
You already know.
I really appreciate it. It's a great book. And we would love to have you back for more cultural conversations.
Absolutely.
Because the chat loves hearing what you have to say. They're saying very interesting. Jacqueline D. Reynolds, she's checking in from Brooklyn, New York. She said, good morning. And so the questions are coming, but we're not going to hold you because you're on the same time as me. So it's pretty early in the morning. But thank you, Dr. Hunter, and happy Black History Month.
Happy Black History Month.
All right. Peace and love. All right, y'all. We have a couple more headlines to get through. And since we're talking about Black history, here's some entertainment news that you might want to know. So Ava DuVernay and Byron Allen have partnered to have officially developed and feature a film called King versus the United States of America. Now, the project will chronicle Coretta Scott King's decade-long relentless pursuit of the truth behind the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And so this movie is in development by two powerhouses. We know that Ava DuVernay is an excellent storyteller and visionary. And we know Byron Allen has huge pockets. So this is, a huge motion picture that we should be on the lookout for. So it's coming to a theater near you. And finally, in honor of Super Bowl week, we are officially in Super Bowl week. Activities are happening. So, of course, this week we'll be bringing you different scenarios and situations and things happening for Super Bowl week. But this one is important because one of the most important elements to the Black experience is the Black church. And we know that church is magnified when you have some soul-stirring, knee-tapping gospel music, right? And so BET has announced that former NFL MVP Cam Newton, interesting choice, will host the 27th annual Super Bowl Soulful Celebration. Now, under the theme Go Higher, the lineup includes performances by Pastor Mike Jr., Layla Hathaway, Lou Russell, Miles Minnick, Jamal Roberts, and the NFL's player choir. Who knew the NFL had a choir? And the South Carolina State University Band. They're all set to perform and participate. And this will also be airing on BET. So you can check your local listings for times to watch it. And then, of course, the Super Bowl happens this Sunday. The New England Patriots, I like to say Cardi B's team, and the Seattle Seahawks will be playing. And an interesting thing that I saw is they pointed out that the New England Patriots, how Kraft the owner was at Melania's movie debut at the Kennedy Center, and he's also donated to Donald Trump's campaign versus the Seattle Seahawks owner. She's never donated to the Trump campaign, and she has a lot of philanthropic endeavors that help community. And so that was one of the things they pointed out was like, who you gonna choose? Are you gonna choose the Trumpster or the philanthropic person? So you can make that decision, or you can just keep it to the field and choose your favorite team. Orange G says, bring back in living color Super Bowl halftime show. Those shows made the NFL step up their game. That's where the halftime show came from. Orange G, you are right. It came from In Living Color. They sparked this, big production for Super Bowl halftime shows. And of course, we know Bad Bunny, who won huge at the Grammys. He's performing at the halftime show. There are rumors that Cardi B might hit that stage. We'll have to wait and see. And then you have Turning Point with Kid Rock. And then there's conversation that Nicki Minaj might show up over there. And that's for all the mega folks. So we'll see who'll be watching what. Or some folks might be turning into the Olympics during halftime because the Olympics are set to start on Friday. We'll have more news about that. So Black America, we happening, we going. In spite of what's happening over there with the Trumpsters. So before we get out of here, let's jump into some Black facts. This is important. In 1870, the 15th Amendment was ratified prohibiting the denial of the right to vote based upon race, color, or previous conditions of servitude. And we know that there's a fight right now to protect the vote of people of color, particularly Black folks. And we know it all too well. So think about the 15th Amendment today. It's a little Black history fact. And last but not least, since we were talking about the Super Bowl in 2013, Beyonce reunited with Destiny's Child for the Super Bowl halftime show. It was such a great show. Beyonce came out and did her thing. And so that's it, folks. We hope you have enjoyed our guests, the headlines that we have brought to you. And in between time till tomorrow, you can head over to BlackPressUSA.com for the latest news, views, and opinions that's impacting and uplifting the Black experience. Talk to you tomorrow.